They tell you that honesty builds intimacy, that vulnerability is the bridge to connection, that the more you share, the more she'll stay. But out here, in the real world where masks are currency and silence is power, there's a brutal truth no one teaches you. The man who spills everything loses his shape. He becomes explainable, predictable, safe. And safe never stirs obsession. Meanwhile, the man who holds his cards, who lets her wonder, who says less than he knows, he becomes the question that haunts her long after the conversation ends. She'll say she wants transparency, but what she'll chase is mystery. She'll claim she needs closeness, but what keeps her awake is the echo of a man who never fully arrived. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to become that man without pretending, without performing, without revealing the parts of you that should never be surrendered. She asks you where you see yourself in 5 years. You say, somewhere peaceful. You don't explain. You let the silence do what explanations can't. Because what she's really asking isn't about careers or plans. It's about how much of yourself you're willing to lay on the table for her to dissect, control, or fix. And when you give her the bare minimum a riddle instead of a roadmap, her instincts sharpen. Curiosity ignites. You've just become a man she can't file away under the label of nice, open, or easy. You've become something more dangerous, something undefined, something she can't conquer yet. The world has trained you to over-explain, to fill the space, to answer her questions like she's your confessor and you're hoping for redemption. But every time you unravel yourself in front of her, your fears, your doubts, your dreams, you're not building trust. You're flooding the mystery, and mystery is what keeps her drawn to you. Mystery is what keeps her leaning in instead of backing off. When you strip that away too fast, she doesn't feel closer. She feels like the hunt is over. You don't owe your story to anyone who hasn't earned it. And yet most men bleed themselves out hoping that full exposure will buy affection. You give her the blueprint to your soul too soon, and she stops needing to wonder. You tell her why you act the way you act, and she starts thinking she understands you. And the moment she thinks she understands you is the moment the chase ends. Because what she wants, what she feels pulled toward, isn't your transparency. It's the impulse to reach deeper. It's the not knowing that drives desire. It's the quiet moments when you look away, when your eyes say more than your mouth ever could, when you're right next to her, but there's still something withheld, something untouched, something sacred. That's the hook. That's what her heart remembers at 2 a.m, long after the good guys have told her everything. And this isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or calculated silence. It's about spiritual self-possession, about knowing that the deepest parts of you aren't up for auction just because she smiled. It's about protecting the gravity of your being, because once you give it away cheaply, she senses it. And no woman wants a man who gives his soul before she's even earned his time. Let her ask. Let her prod. Let her say she wants to know everything. Smile. Nod. Say just enough to keep her orbiting and no more. You don't lie, you don't dodge, but you never offer full access. That access is a privilege she must be worthy of. And when you treat it like a sacred vault instead of a cheap open book, you radiate something she can't ignore: value, self-control, unreadable strength. That's why she can't stop thinking about the one who barely spoke. The man at the cafe who just smiled, sipped his drink, and said, maybe when she asked if he'd be around next week, that single word made her replay the night 100 times, made her scroll through old texts, made her wonder what he meant. Because it wasn't clear. Because he didn't give her the closure, the narrative, the comfort of certainty. He gave her space. And in that space, desire bloomed. The man who doesn't reveal himself isn't cold. He's collected. He's not dismissive, he's disciplined. And she senses it, even if she doesn't have the words. She feels the restraint, the rare inner stillness of a man who isn't looking for validation. He doesn't seek to be seen. He allows her to witness what he chooses to show. And that subtle shift changes everything. You've been taught to think that openness equals intimacy. But intimacy, in her mind, doesn't begin with facts. It begins with fascination. And fascination can only exist when something remains hidden. Not forever, but long enough for her to feel the pull, to feel like she's earning it. That's how you move from being forgettable to unforgettable. Because when you're an open book, she can finish the story. But when you're a locked journal with just a few lines revealed, she imagines the rest. And what she imagines will always be more intoxicating than what you could ever say. She doesn't crave another confession. She's drowning in them. Every man before you has tried to impress her with vulnerability, with tearful admissions and polished stories of past heartbreak. But all she felt was weightless pity, not reverence, not obsession. Because it's not the man who tells her everything who haunts her. It's the one who says almost nothing, but whose silence feels like a secret too heavy to touch. You show her restraint, and she calls you guarded. You speak sparingly, and she says she can't quite figure you out. But she doesn't walk away. No. She lingers. She leans closer. Because the unknown is magnetic. And what most men fear being misunderstood, being called distant, you wear like armor. Not because you're afraid of being known, but because you know the cost of being understood too soon. You understand that revelation without ritual is robbery, that something sacred is lost when you give too easily what should be earned. She will try to pull it from you. She'll watch your expressions in the dark. She'll ask about your childhood. She'll trace your scars with her fingers. But each time you offer a vague answer, a half smile, a gaze that doesn't flinch, her intrigue deepens. You are not the project she can fix. You're the labyrinth she chose to walk into, even knowing she might never find the center. And that choice, that risk, is what ties her to you. This isn't about withholding affection. It's about withholding interpretation. You can be warm, even loving, but never predictable. Never available in the way she expects. The moment she can say, "I know him," the mystery collapses. And she doesn't want you in pieces laid out on the table. She wants you whole, closed, and pulsing with inner life. She wants to wonder what's behind your eyes when you look at her. She wants to sense you've lived through something, bled for something, killed something inside you, and yet still you sit there, quiet and composed, like a man who knows exactly what he is. Because women aren't drawn to men who need to be understood. They're drawn to men who can't be contained, who walk through rooms like ghosts, fully present but never possessed. And the reason you've lost her in the past is because you wanted her to get you. You wanted her to understand your pain, your love, your depth. But in trying to be understood, you made yourself small. You folded your mystery into language. You translated your shadows into syllables. And she walked away. Not because you were too much, but because you became nothing she didn't already know. You don't need to disappear to be powerful. You just need to know what not to reveal. And the truth is, most of your power lives in what you don't say, in what you let her imagine. That pause before you speak. That slow breath when she asks what's wrong and you say, "Nothing important." That phrase lives in her bloodstream for weeks. Nothing important. Was it pain? Was it love? Was it boredom? She doesn't know. But she feels something. And that feeling is yours. You didn't even have to try. The game changes when you stop trying to be legible. When you stop volunteering your heart like a beggar in the street. When you walk away in the middle of a sentence not to punish her, not to dominate her, but because you don't owe her every answer. Because sometimes the most honest thing you can do is leave the door half closed. Not out of cruelty, out of respect for yourself, for your silence, for the stories that shaped you and don't belong to anyone else. And the paradox is, the less you give, the more she offers. Her thoughts, her time, her secrets. Because when you don't rush to reveal yourself, you create space for her to step into. She'll fill that space with vulnerability she's never shared. Not because you asked, but because you didn't. Because you held your center. And in doing that, you became the mirror she never expected. That's the man she remembers. The one she couldn't solve. The one who walked away before the ending. The one who never begged for closeness but left fingerprints on her soul anyway. He didn't explain his silence. He let it echo. There's a moment every man feels it when she leans in just a little too close and says, "You never really talk about yourself. And this is where most of you collapse. You take it as a cue to open the floodgates. You mistake her discomfort with your mystery as a call for clarity, and you pour it all out. The traumas, the exes, the insecurities you thought would make you seem real. You want to be seen so badly that you strip down in front of someone who hasn't earned the right to witness it. But what you don't realize is that her statement wasn't a complaint. It was a confession. A confession that your restraint is working. That she's been circling you like a fire she can't touch. That your silence has weight. That your words, rare and chosen, feel like a prize when they arrive. And that discomfort she voices, that's the craving building. Don't ruin it with explanation. She doesn't want you to be unreadable because you're hiding. She wants you to be unreadable because you're full. Because you're not bleeding out to be liked. Because you don't rush to fill the silence when it settles like a fog between you. You sit in it. You own it. And she begins to feel that maybe, just maybe, you are the first man she's ever met who's not performing, not pleading, not bending. There's a brutal truth to this. A man who reveals himself too quickly doesn't seem honest. He seems empty, like he's trying to be understood because he has no weight to carry alone. But the man who keeps part of himself sealed, he commands attention without words. His absence is more compelling than most men's presence. His glance more intimate than their poems. He doesn't rehearse what to say next. He doesn't script his vulnerability. He simply is. And that being solid, unbroken, undefined is what makes women ache for closeness. Every man she's known has been too eager to unpack himself. To be loved, to be fixed, to be nurtured. But you are complete in your silence. And that threatens everything she's been told to expect. You don't ask to be seen. You choose what is seen. That shift in power is subtle, but it changes the dynamic entirely. You are no longer the boy waiting to be understood. You are the man she must earn her place beside. It's the same reason she rereads the last message you sent even though it was only 3 words. It's why she stares at your side of the bed when you're gone. You never gave her enough to build a story. So she builds one anyway. And that story is stitched with obsession, not closure. You live rent-free in the corners of her mind where mystery turns into meaning. And meaning into hunger. Do not give her a blueprint. Give her a riddle. One she can't solve. One she doesn't want to solve. Because it's the pursuit, the sacred not knowing that makes her fall. And when she finally asks, "Why are you like this?" that's when you smile. Not cruelly. Not mockingly. But gently. Because you know she's not really asking for an answer. She's marveling at the fact that you don't need to be decoded to feel powerful. You don't need to be exposed to be real. You don't need to be explained to be unforgettable. What she wants isn't all of you. She wants to want all of you. She wants to feel that ache of not quite enough. That's what keeps her tethered. That's what makes her memory linger long after the bed is cold. And you, without saying much, without giving much, without breaking your silence, you become the man she compares everyone else to. Because in a world of men who scream their worth, you became unforgettable by never raising your voice.